'Twas brillig in the slithy toes, did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy where the boar goes, and the mome wraths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws the bite, the claws they catch. Beware the jub bird, and shun the frumious bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the man some foe he sought, so he rested by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And, as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, with eyes aflame, came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. All frabjous day, callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig in the slithy toes, did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy where the boar goes, and the mome wraths outgrabe.
The summary for the Jabberwocky poem is that the various creatures within the land are described within the first stanza. A father warns his son about the Jabberwocky that lurks in the forest, and then the son goes out on a quest to slay the Jabberwock. The son thinks by a tree for a while about what he's going to do, and then suddenly the Jabberwock appears, and the son decides to take his sword and slay the Jabberwock, repeatedly stabbing it with the sword until it's dead, and then he cuts off the head of the Jabberwock and brings it back to his father. The father then celebrates in joy and triumph, and then everything in the land goes back to normal, and the peace within the forest returns as it was in the first stanza of the poem.
The tone of the poem is upbeat and whimsical in the first stanza as the speaker describes all of the mystical animals that are in the woods. The tone, however, shifts to something more sinister at the beginning of the second stanza as the father warns his son of the Jabberwock and other dangerous animals that are in the woods as well. The third stanza is upbeat again as the son is on his quest to slay the Jabberwock. The fourth and fifth stanza maintain the tone established in the third stanza as the son is encountering the dreaded Jabberwock and then defeating it, killing it. The poem ends with the same happy and upbeat tone that it began with, as the father and son are celebrating the slaying of the Jabberwock.
Some examples of figurative language that we found in the Jabberwocky poem include auditory imagery, which is present in the line, "The vorpal blade went snicker-snack," because snicker-snack allows the reader to visualize the sound of the blade cutting into the Jabberwock. This use of imagery helps the reader to have a more vivid idea of slaying the Jabberwock. Repetition is shown in the first stanza and the last stanza since they are exactly the same. The author uses symbolism to establish meaning behind the creatures of the poem. The Jabberwock is symbolic of chaos and irrationality, and the boy's journey to slay it acts as a representation of society's desire to get rid of irrationality and things it cannot control. The author wrote this poem in a time where society's views on disorders were harsh, and this poem is a reflection of the time that he lived in.
In Jabberwocky, Carol uses nonsense words in order to create a whimsical feeling for the reader. For example, he combines words like slimy and lithy to create the word slithy. He does this because he felt as if simply saying the words themselves would not have the same effect on the reader. In the first stanza, he uses these nonsense words to describe the creatures of the poem. Carol's words may not have any formal meaning, but the sounds they make and the feeling they give help the reader to understand the events of the poem. A theme prevalent in Jabberwocky is that irrationality is to be feared and avoided. During the era of which this poem was written, irrationality and the inability to be controlled by society was viewed as a threat. This poem represents this theme, with the boy going on a great quest to slay a beast that represents chaos and the lack of order. There are also many other beasts that represent this, and they all help to build the effect the poem is giving it.